Welcome to this explainer. Let's jump right into a fundamental frustration of modern life. Have you ever wondered why a brand new ultra-high-definition television or a super powerful laptop gets cheaper and better every single year, but the cost of going to the doctor, sending your kids to college, or even just going out to see a live concert feels like it's literally spiraling out of control? It totally feels like the system is broken, right? Well, today we're going to unpack the real economic reality behind this. And honestly, you might be surprised to learn that it's actually not a sign of failure at all. It's really just the price of being human.
To really understand how we got here, we've got to trace things back a bit and do a sort of reverse diagnosis. So think about this. Once upon a time, buying a finely crafted pair of scissors was a major labor-intensive purchase. It was expensive. Meanwhile, a quick trip to the local barber for a haircut, incredibly cheap. But today, that reality has completely flipped on its head. You can grab a factory-made pair of scissors for just a couple of bucks, yet that haircut, it just keeps getting more and more expensive. So what gives? It's not like barbers are suddenly getting super greedy, and let's be real, the haircuts aren't necessarily getting 10 times better. It really all boils down to how human time is valued in an advancing world. And that brings us to the official diagnosis for this modern price puzzle. It's called Baumol's cost disease. First pinned down by economists William Baumol and William Bowen way back in the 1960s, it describes a very specific, kind of fascinating economic phenomenon. Basically, it's the tendency for wages in jobs that have seen little to no increase in productivity to rise anyway. Why would they do that? Simply to keep up with the rising wages in other jobs that did experience massive productivity growth. It's a structural feature of modern economies. It makes our most highly human-centric sectors increasingly expensive over time, regardless of how efficiently they're actually run.
To break this down intuitively, Baumol essentially split the economy into two distinct buckets. In the first bucket, we have the progressive sector. Think manufacturing and tech. In this world, you can automate, you can outsource, you can scale. A modern factory can pump out thousands of shoes in the exact same time it used to take a traditional cobbler to hand-stitch just one pair. Productivity absolutely skyrockets. Then in the other bucket, we have the stagnant sector. This is healthcare, education, the arts. These fields rely fundamentally on irreplaceable human time and face-to-face interaction. A surgeon can't operate on two patients at once. A teacher can only give so much individual attention in a day. In this stagnant sector, productivity is naturally bottlenecked by the simple limits of human capacity.
I love Baumol's famous thought experiment for this because it just perfectly hits the nail on the head. Imagine a string quartet playing a Mozart piece. It requires 4 musicians to perform it today, exactly as it did back in 1820. You can't just swap out a violinist for a machine, right? And you certainly can't ask the musicians to play the piece twice as fast to double their output. Sure, you'd finish in half the time, but the audience would absolutely ask for their money back. The output per work hour of a performer is virtually unchanged across centuries. The stagnant sector isn't failing. It's just made up of these highly human tasks where productivity is pretty much fixed.
So here's where it gets tricky. It's how these two sectors interact in the real world. Because, here's the catch. Both the progressive sector and the stagnant sector have to compete in the exact same labor market. When that progressive factory becomes highly efficient thanks to robotics, they make way more money and can easily afford to raise their workers' wages. But to attract and keep good talent, the stagnant sector, like our hospitals and our schools, they have to raise their wages to keep up. But remember, the hospital's output is flat. They aren't magically treating 100 times more patients an hour. So to pay those higher competitive wages without a matching boost in productivity, the hospital really only has one choice. They have to raise their prices. And boom, the unit cost in human services rises exponentially. All right, let's move to Section 1, the lab results, tracing the macroeconomic spread.
When you actually dig into the professional data, we track something called total factor productivity, or TFP. It's basically a measure of how much bang you get for your economic buck over time. And when you compare the traded sector, that's manufacturing, tech, the progressive stuff, against the non-traded sector, those stagnant human-to-human services, the difference is wild. Over a 25-year period, there is this massive widening divergence. The progressive sectors are maintaining or exploding their productivity, while the non-traded human-reliant services actually see a relative decline in productivity growth. This widening gap, that's the exact engine driving Baumol's cost disease.
And look, this isn't just some isolated quirk. Looking across a multitude of European nations from 1995 to 2020, we see the exact same general downward pressure on overall productivity growth. It's a measurable macroeconomic reality across the board. This proves that Baumol's cost disease is way more than just a neat academic theory in a textbook. It's a structural reality of mature, developed economies as they transition into post-industrial, service-dominated societies. As our population ages and demands even more healthcare and social services, this stagnant sector is going to pull even more weight in our overall economy. So what's the ultimate diagnosis from the economists studying these lab results? Well, researchers like Nordhaus analyzing the US and Hartwig analyzing Europe uncovered some really fascinating realities. First, exactly as predicted, low productivity industries do see significantly higher price growth. But here is the crazy positive twist. They also found that the real output in those progressive, high-tech sectors expands way faster than anyone anticipated. Because these tech sectors are growing so rapidly and getting so incredibly efficient, they actually counterbalance the sluggishness of the stagnant ones. So while your medical bills might totally give you sticker shock, the actual drag on the growth of the wider economy is relatively mild. The disease is real, for sure, but it's not fatal to the economy as a whole. Let's wrap things up with Section 2, the prognosis. Can technology cure the disease? We are literally living right in the middle of a massive modern tension today. On one side, we're seeing the incredible potential of artificial intelligence to bring massive productivity gains into these previously stagnant sectors. AI can now analyze thousands of complex medical records, scans, and diagnostic data in a matter of seconds. It's scaling output in a way that was previously unimaginable in healthcare. That is a massive productivity gain. But on the flip side, we have this enduring reality. A human doctor providing empathy, nuanced understanding, and complex personal care to a patient who's scared and in distress. You just cannot scale human empathy. You can't automate a nurse holding a patient's hand. So AI offers us unprecedented opportunities to introduce efficiencies, absolutely. But it also really risks widening the gap between the high-tech tasks we can automate and the high-touch human elements we just can't. As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a bit of a provocative thought. Baumol's cost disease shows us that the rising costs of things like education, healthcare, and the arts aren't necessarily because the systems are totally broken or inherently inefficient. It's actually an inescapable byproduct of our own economic progress. As our technology makes manufactured goods incredibly cheap, human time inherently becomes our most premium, expensive resource. So the question we should be asking isn't how we force these human-centric sectors to act like robotic factories. The real question is, in an increasingly wealthy, highly automated society, how much are we willing to value and actually pay for the jobs that require a truly human touch? Thanks so much for exploring this with me today.